Is there a cartoon franchise that has survived more iterations and decades than Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Gang? Going all the way back to 1969, the characters, created by Hanna-Barbera, have survived TV shows, specials, spin-offs, direct-to-video, and live-action movies. And they've done pretty well in pretty much every version that they've appeared in. The character, Scooby-Doo, is a constant. He's as constant as any superhero character. There's no stopping them, even though the original concept was a simple formula that paid tribute to classic gothic horror stories mixed with 1960s cliches and stereotypes. Given where it came from, it's actually astonishing it has survived this long. And with all of the concurrent Scooby-Doo projects out there, Warner Animation Group decided to make their own Scooby-Doo movie as a jumping-off point for the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. As a casual fan of the original show, I was curious to see Warner Animation Group's interpretation of Scooby-Doo. I like what they did with the Lego movies, and even if they wanted to start something as goofy as the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, I was still wanting a new theatrical film that would better respect the other incarnations of the franchise. I have a soft love for the Raja Gosnell directed, James Gunn written Scooby-Doo movies. I thought the first one did a great job at an actual story idea and making fun of the original show, while the sequel, in my opinion, was a slight improvement that paid tribute to everything that made the show great. Overall, they're still a product of their time, so I think it was necessary to do something newer, especially something animated. However, the marketing was getting me nervous, the trailer did nothing for me, and there was an overemphasis on Blue Falcon in all their promotions. I know his connection to Hanna-Barbera and the plans for a combined universe, but wasn't this supposed to be a Scooby-Doo movie? The title is also ridiculous. I know they need to differentiate from everything else that exists, but Scoob? That's your title? It's based off the way Shaggy will scream the dog's name at times, and it originally had periods between the letters, so when it was originally announced, I thought it would be an acronym for something. But alas, it was changed to Scoob with an exclamation point, and this poster that seems almost too serious to be satirical. Then the entire world fell apart, so it didn't even seem like a theatrical release was going to happen, so it went straight to video on demand, and it must have done really well because only a few weeks later it was on HBO Max for free, where I eventually saw it. And I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty awful. Not only does it do pretty much nothing to connect to the concept of Scooby-Doo in general, but it's not funny, it's trying way too hard with the hip modern music, has way too many Hanna-Barbera crossovers that feel more forced than genuine, and the story itself is almost too complex, but it's also boring. Honestly, I'm not sure what the fanbase thinks, but this got on my nerves, only because I had a lot of optimism for what could be done. Plus, the cinematic universe angle intrigued me. There's way too many failed attempts at the Marvel-esque universes at this point. But one series that has become successful was Legendary's Monsterverse. So, if something as dumb as that can turn out great and fun, I thought the same could happen with these cheap Saturday morning cartoons meeting up in, more than likely, Wacky Races the movie. Instead, the cameos don't feel true to form, but more like vehicles for famous actors to make a mockery of. But in the end, it doesn't work, and I only see the actor. Tracy Morgan is Captain Caveman, but it's portrayed in a way for the audience to know that it's just Tracy Morgan, not a modern take on the Hanna-Barbera character. Captain Caveman is here only in name and in design. Blue Falcon is the same way. Mark Wahlberg does get a little more lost in the role, but what could have been a funny take on the character ends up becoming repetitive and stale. Not that these original TV creations were unique or full of personality, but isn't the point of modernizing to improve on an old concept? The only one really living up to their potential is Jason Isaacs as Dick Dastardly. Of course, he says Dick as many times as he can, and there's that weird scene where he dresses up like a lady cop. I don't know what that was all about, but I enjoy the villain for having a lot of fun, having a great design, and landing most of the material. I love when these cartoon villains' overall evil scheme usually leads to a small-scale reward. In the case of Dick, he's going into all of this work collecting the heads of Cerberus, which creates a portal to the underworld, which can only be accessed by a descendant of Alexander the Great's dog, which happens to be Scooby-Doo, just so he can save his own dog, Muttley, who got trapped in here. It's over the top, but you can't help but see this as humorous and leading to a tender moment. Except, can we stop with these portals to other dimensions? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters 2016, The Avengers, Justice League. Why is this the only story we can do now? The animation is also great at recreating the look of the characters, especially the extended universe of Hanna-Barbera. The Scooby-Doo gang themselves are sleek, shiny renditions of their television counterparts, and there's a lot of quick gags and classic sound effects that help celebrate what made the Hanna-Barbera cartoons so iconic. Unfortunately, the personalities themselves are dry and trimmed down. This is the 2020s, so every character needs to be strong and independent, which means abandoning the classic tropes that make them identifiable. Look, I'm not against making strong character upgrades, but you can still do that while retaining what makes the characters special. Daphne can't be a damsel, or even make fun of the fact that she's a damsel, but they don't add anything new. Velma doesn't sound like her original self and isn't stereotypically nerdy, but again, they don't add anything new, so she falls flat. They play up Fred as a doofus, but it doesn't lead to a lot of funny antics that we haven't seen before, especially in the now surprisingly superior live-action flicks. Shaggy and Scooby remain the closest to their original characterizations, but when did Scooby start talking in full-length sentences? I should also mention that the current voice actors for the animation shows weren't asked to do this, but they instead had somewhat famous people like Gina Rodriguez, Zac Efron, and Will Forte step in. But I don't really get why. It's not like they overly promoted their names in the marketing, so they're not trying to bank on it, and I'm not sure they're big enough names to pull in an audience anyway. I wish they would have stuck to the voices that have been doing it perfectly fine for years. Like I said, the story is a mess and gets way too complex for the climax, but the first few minutes gave me a lot of hope. We see the Mystery Gang as a younger group, and it's like a prequel in the vein of A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, and they even recreate the original 1969 intro, with all the famous villains shown. I thought they were going to have fun poking around the gothic, Hammer-esque setting of the original series, but with a modern flavor. Instead, Simon Cowell comes in at around the 10-minute mark, and they pretty much abandon everything Scooby-Doo. You know this will be a failure when your big joke is having Simon Cowell, who hasn't been in the public conscience since his time on American Idol, listens to Shaggy and Scooby sing a song from A Star Is Born. They have a chance to reintroduce a nostalgic and enjoyable series, but instead, they jumpstart a supposed Hanna-Barbera franchise. Did every Hollywood executive forget Iron Man? That movie started an entire universe, but it didn't feature so many Easter eggs. If you're trying to build up a cinematic universe in a movie you don't know will be successful yet, maybe you should stop and think, are we going to look embarrassing if we try to do this and this ends up being a failure? And the answer is yes. The answer is always yes. Don't try to present a cinematic universe when you don't have one yet. This only ended up reminding me of how much I like the live-action adaptations, even though, and I hate using this word, they're hardcore guilty pleasures. If you ask me, the best Scooby-Doo movie out there is actually Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. It's an original and intriguing story that pays tribute to what the franchise is, while doing something completely different that kind of feels like the end-all be-all of Scooby-Doo. It was kind of the final idea that we needed to see from the Mystery Gang. But this movie really didn't do the job. Not at all. And, you know, it's just trying to make a cinematic universe that I'm still kind of curious to see. Because I want to see how they're going to get the Flintstones or the Jetsons or Jabberjaw into this. I think it'd be actually interesting just to see how they do it. I'm not saying it's going to be good. But I hope this movie was successful enough for them to keep trying it, because let's see what they end up doing. In the meantime, I've seen this twice. I have no wish to see it again. This one will have you yelping, Zoinks!
Special thanks to Ryan for this Patreon request. Thanks for watching the video, and special shout out to Anthony, Anna, Kirsten, Spencer, Lucas, Ryan, and Robert for the support on Patreon. By joining my Patreon, you can get exclusive videos and blogs, and for only $7, you can request your own movie review. I hope you stick around, cinephile, and have a happy, productive day.